Hello everybody, this is Llodg, and today I am back to talking about 10 more RPGs that I love so much and could reasonably see me putting in my top 10 list. Just like my other video, I'm only going to have one game per series on this list, so it isn't filled with just like 3 series. Also, this list isn't in any particular order, it was hard enough trying to pick just 10. With that, let's get into my first pick. Super Mario RPG. I have heard that this game is great for so long, and when I played the original on the Wii U years ago, I got stuck on an early boss and never picked up the game again. But over the new year, I bought the Super Mario RPG remake on Switch and decided to give it another chance since I had played so many RPGs between then and now. And I ended up loving the game so much. First of all, the remake was very well done and looked beautiful. Second of all, the game is so charming and funny. I love so many of the characters in this game, specifically Mallow, who I didn't think I'd end up enjoying as much as I did, and he ended up being my favorite party member character-wise. Gino is also great, he was also one of my favorites to always have in my party. I played the game 100% in handheld mode and it still looked amazing, and I really couldn't put this game down until I finished it. Even the minigames were so fun that I did as many as I could while playing. The music is also great, it was done by Yoko Shinomura, one of my favorite composers, and the soundtrack is another one of my favorites. The remake even allows you to easily swap between the original and new soundtrack whenever you want. Overall, it was such a fun and enjoyable experience, and I highly recommend it even if you don't love RPGs as much as I do. It also helps that the main story is fairly short. So I was gonna put Earthbound on this list, but the more I thought about it, the more I just realized how good Mother 3 was. If you somehow don't know, Mother 3 is a sequel to Earthbound that never got a release outside of Japan. Even Mother 1, Earthbound Beginnings, got a Western release, but so far Mother 3 is still Japan exclusive. That didn't stop me from playing the game though. Mother 3 is a GBA game, but it's still very similar to Earthbound, similar art style and gameplay. It was originally going to be developed for the N64, but I'm glad we ended up getting what we got because the character designs are just so nice in this game. I really love Kumatara's design specifically. Her color palette is just perfect in my opinion. I loved her design so much I even tried to draw it. It didn't end up amazing, but I'm proud of it. Mother 3 had so many moments that made my heart drop. Now I don't cry from games, but this one got me very close to tearing up. I don't want to spoil this game at all, especially since it hasn't gotten an official release, but I do love the story so much. The music is also great, the combat even has a combo mechanic if you time it well to the rhythm. I also really love the remixes of the music that appeared in the Smash series, but they were originally from this game, obviously. If it ever does get a Western release, please buy it, I promise you won't regret it. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is one of those games that I always really wanted to try, but the combat really held it back for me for a long time. But I am so glad I finally pushed through and play it. And I think having this game set in the Old Republic, the earliest era we've seen so far, was a great decision. You don't really have to worry about anything that will impact the other movies in the future eras because of the amount of time between this game and those movies. I also like this era has a lot of Sith and Jedi. This allows for a lot of different characters to be in this game than if it were set during the prequels. This game made Revan one of my favorite Star Wars characters, and I hope that they one day bring him into canon. I've heard mixed opinions on the Revan book, but I do want to give it a try myself one day. Bastila is also great, she even uses the yellow lightsaber. The cast in general is really great, I loved recruiting them all to go across the galaxy. The amount of locations was amazing and well needed for a Star Wars game. I also just really love the story. I know the game is 20 plus years old at this point, but I don't want to spoil it at all just so you can play the game for yourself and enjoy it. My only real issue with the game is the combat, and I know a lot of people might hate me for it, but I don't think it's too fun. The start of the game can be so difficult when you miss every other attack, and it's based on a Star Wars D&D system, but it's also in real time, so unlike Baldur's Gate 3 where it's completely turn-based, this game is also turn-based, but it doesn't feel like it since you can input your next 4 turns in, and there just isn't a lot of strategy you can do within this game. So basically I just want Larian to come in and remake this game with actual turn-based combat and it'll be perfect. Because we all know we are so far away from the real remake. And I still need to finish KOTOR 2 one of these days. I think I'm really close to finishing it, and I think it's great too. But KOTOR 1 is just so perfect in my opinion. Now I know NieR Automata may not seem like your traditional RPG, but I'm counting it for this video. And man, this game is just so good. For one, the combat is amazing. Platinum Games developed the combat alongside Square Enix, and they have created some of my favorite action games, so it makes sense I would love this game's combat too. I want to talk about it in its own video, but the opening for this game is one of my favorite openings in all of gaming. It really sucks you into the game, it makes you want to play more. The character designs and overall design decisions for the game were really well done too. I love how the Yora bunker is in this really colorless filter, it gives an amazing contrast to being on Earth. Also, I want to touch on this since I see a lot of people complaining about it, but Automata's different endings don't have you playing the same game over and over again. Most of them are just joke endings, but the ones that aren't have each playthrough be you playing as a different character with a different playstyle, or it's just more of the story. So if you don't want to play this game because you don't want to play the same game 6 times, don't worry, you don't have to. The story is just incredible and also has such amazing music. Beautiful Song is one of my favorite pieces of video game music ever, of all time. I still need to play through Replicant sometime in the future, though I'm not sure how well it'll hold up compared to its sequel. You know I had to put a Fossil Fighters game in here, and sadly, it was the last Fossil Fighters game to ever be made. I love the first Fossil Fighters game, and Champions really sets up the presentation and gameplay of the original in so many ways. Finding dinosaur bones and digging them up to have your Vivosaurs was such a good idea for a game that I'm glad that they expanded it, and the fact that finding more bones for said Vivosaurs powers them up tells you all you need to know about how great of an idea this was. The story isn't as interesting compared to the first game in my opinion, but it's still really memorable to me. Like, the main villain of this game sticks out to me so much. This game also isn't directly connected to the first game, but there are some callbacks to it. The main character designs are also really cool, and I think benefited a lot from the upgrade visuals. You could also choose your gender in this game, finally, and much like how in the first game I replayed it a few times, I also replayed this game, except I would just play as a girl. I also thought that your friend in this game, Todd, was a girl because his text box was pink. I'm not sure why I thought he was a girl since his name was Todd, but I thought it had something to do with what gender you chose, so if I played as a girl he would be a boy, but nope, he was just always a boy. Anyway, Nintendo, please revive this series like we revived Vivosaurs. On my last list I put on Persona 5, and in between making that video and this one, I finally finished Persona 4 Golden, and I might be crazy for this, but I think this is my new favorite Persona game. Persona 4 has a pretty slow start. I mean, when I was finally playing the game without having to worry about tutorials popping up, I was already 5 hours into the game, but I was loving every second of it. The characters and party cast in this game are so good. There was no one I disliked that I wasn't supposed to dislike. The party stories are also just so interesting. Persona 5 had most of the palaces linked to a specific party member to get you invested into going into the palace, but in Persona 4, each of the dungeons are about a specific character themselves. I think this really helps invest the player into doing those dungeons so you can save said character. My only complaint with the dungeons is that they are like Persona 3's dungeons in that they are almost all randomly generated floors, so unless it's a specific floor, the main gameplay of all the dungeons is just running around from fight to fight. If they end up doing a remake of 4 like they did for 3, I would hope that they'd make the dungeons a bit more interesting, but Reload is very similar to 3, so I'm not sure if that'll happen. But still, a remake with updated models of the characters would be amazing. This game isn't as long as Persona 5, though it did take me a good 80 hours to play through. Not a short game by any means, but not as long as Persona 5 can take. The story was also very interesting and honestly made me tear up at moments near the end. Persona 4, like 5, is one of those games that I honestly wish would never end. It's so enjoyable. I know Final Fantasy VI was originally called 3 when it came to the US, but I'll be calling it 6 just so everyone's on the same page. I really love the gameplay of FF6. All the Espers can make the game fairly customizable with all the different magic spells characters can have. There are also so many playable characters to choose from. Now, I do have a bit of an issue with the amount of characters, because it means that you can only have so many in your party at any given time. So specific cutscenes the characters will have generic lines everyone could say. It just makes the characters feel a whole lot less unique from each other with stuff like this. Though I still enjoy the overall plot of the game, I just wish specific characters got a bit more of a focus in it. I think most SNES games hold up surprisingly well visually for how old they are, but FF6 in particular still looks amazing. I played the original SNES version, and can still recommend that version of the game, but the pixel remaster is also pretty good. It even has one scene in HD 2D. I wish they did a 3D remake like Final Fantasy IV, I just really liked how that game looked, but oh well. Also, if you say Terra has blonde hair, not green hair, get out. I recently played through Dragon Quest 1 and 2 on Switch and thought they were pretty enjoyable, though obviously being some of the first JRPGs on consoles, I wasn't expecting them to be mind-blowing in any way. I thought Dragon Quest 3 would be similar, but it ended up being so good. The game feels so much more polished and well thought out compared to the previous 2 games. It has a big overarching story with many different smaller plots that help keep your attention. The world is so big for you to explore with so many things you can do once you get a ship. There were also so many moments where I felt like I would need a guide to know exactly what to do, but by talking with NPCs you were able to find your way fairly easily, though I'd still recommend having a guide close by in case you get lost, or to know you should probably grind, because this game does have some grinding for certain areas and bosses. The remake is coming out later this year, and I'm so excited for it. It seems like it'll be pretty faithful from the things I've seen from the trailer. But yeah, there's a reason that despite how old this game is, it's still talked about as one of the greatest RPGs of all time. It really has everything you want, an adventure throughout a fantasy land, where you can fight dragons, and even throw a sword into a volcano. I don't play too many strategy RPGs, but Fire Emblem has always been so fun to me, and Three Houses is my favorite out of the series. I chose to play through the Blue Lions route and really loved it. The characters from that house were also interesting. It's even better you're able to recruit some characters from the other houses. I know it wasn't the most loved mechanic, but I really liked being able to choose classes for all the party members by teaching them. It made switching classes feel more organic than it might have been. The story and world are also fairly interesting. I love political stories, and with all three houses being their own political faction, allows for there to be a lot of interesting stories between each house. It also allows for multiple different playthroughs, playing through all the houses. There's even a DLC house if you want even more. I know some people wish you could experience the full story on just one playthrough or have a true story path, but I kind of like how there isn't a completely wrong or right choice. The gameplay is also really fun. I play on casual because I'm not great at this game and don't want to lose party members, but strategizing the best way to win each map is so much fun. I still need to play so many other Fire Emblem games like Vanished Awakening and Shadows of Valentia, and I also need to play Engage soon. That game looks so fun. The first Xenoblade Chronicles is not only one of my favorite RPGs of all time, but it's also one of my favorite games of all time, and I really didn't think a sequel could even come close to it. And while I still like the first one a bit more, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is another one of my favorite RPGs. The world and setting of the game is so interesting with everyone being on Titans and there being blades that people use. It's similar to the first game's setting, but also with its own unique spin on it. I really loved getting different blades and thus new party members to add to your party. It was such a good idea. While most of the cool blades didn't have any actual plot relevance, you could still do their own side quests, which were really good. I do wish getting new blades wasn't locked to a gacha system. I'm not even sure why it's a gacha system since you can't use any real money on it. I guess you could buy DLC and get cores with them that way, but it's just so weird. It makes it pure chance on which blades you get, so if you want a specific blade, you'll have to get really lucky. The story is amazing and I really came to love so many of the characters. The tone can be a little all over the place at times, but it knows when to get serious. The DLC for this game is also fairly interesting. You can do challenges for blades from the first Xenoblade game and X with Shulk, Fiora, and Elma, which is so cool. I am also including Torna in this choice even though it's kind of its own game, but it's basically an extra DLC prequel campaign. There are a couple characters from the main game in it, but it's mostly new ones, and I also really love them. Torna also has some of my favorite gameplay in the series. The main game's gameplay isn't bad by any means, but in Torna it's so satisfying to swap between the driver and blade at specific times. The music is also incredible. This is one of my most listened to soundtracks of all time. There are so many great songs like You Will Recall Our Names, Counterattack, Drifting Soul, and so many others. I seriously could talk about this game for so long. It really deserves its own video that goes further in depth. And yeah, those are top 10 RPGs that I love a lot. Honestly, I could talk about all these games endlessly, and I'm sure I will make a video on some of them in the future. While making this video, I really wanted to play through some of these games again. They are just so enjoyable to me. Let me know what RPGs you would have in your top 10 list, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day, and goodbye!